Hey guys, so today's video is going to be all about chess habits. And I want to recommend a couple of things that I believe players should incorporate into their training to really maximize their skill and their chess potential. So the first habit, and if you're only going to take away one thing from this video, I would suggest you do this, is to simply keep track of all the games and concepts that you're studying during your practice. You can either record notes in a journal, or what many players do is they take the digital option and they actually save and store games that they look at so that they can review them later. The easiest way to do this is through a site like Chessable, which kind of automatically saves what you're looking at for you, because obviously as you're going through the courses, you're going to be repeating and looking at the same ideas and moves time and time again. But if you're just studying a book or just looking at some videos, any other lessons or courses, a great way to do this is to use ChessBase, open up a new database, simply input the games that you're looking at, maybe some brief notes and annotations. And the main reason this is beneficial is that I just don't think the human brain has a perfect memory. Most of us don't. So if you only look at a game one time, there's a chance that you're not going to remember most of it or most of the ideas even 2-3 weeks later. So by repeating what you look at, repeating the stuff that you learn, this is really, I think, how to maximize your retention and really get the full potential out of learning and studying from games. I know for me personally, when I'm looking at games, I often try to save everything, and I'll review games up to 10-15 times if I really like them, just so I can get a true memory and understanding of what happened in the game, what were the most important concepts. If you don't have ChessBase, an excellent option that's absolutely free is the studies feature on Lichess. With studies, you're able to just create your own studies. You can share them with friends or keep them private. You can just input all the games you're looking at. All you need is a basic understanding of how PGNs work, and I mean, it's pretty straightforward. The second habit that I'd like to suggest is, while you're working on your calculation specifically and you're solving exercises, is to write down your solutions as you're doing the problem. So this is instead of just simply solving the problem in your head and then checking the answer and seeing if you are right, I strongly suggest writing down the solution. And the main benefit of this is, number one, you don't have to keep track of what you calculated. So if you take a book like the Woodpecker Method, for example, the authors are very clear. You have to find the whole solution from the beginning, and you have to see all of the relevant details. And if you miss one or two key variations, well, even though you might have gotten the first move right, you didn't really fully solve the problem, and your calculation could definitely be improved. So when I'm working on my calculation, and I'm not talking about Puzzle Rush here, but working on your deep calculation when you're thinking 10-15 minutes on one position and really trying to extract all of the potential resources and all of the variations, it's very useful to write down what you're calculating, write down your evaluation. Also, for example, if you don't have time to check your solutions right away, you can just come back to it the next day or 2 days later, and you won't exactly remember what you calculated, but since you wrote it down, you'll have an exact picture of all the lines you were looking at, and you can better judge yourself as to how well you did on the problem. The book that I started doing this from was actually this Agard book, Excelling at Chess Calculation. This is where in the back there's like a 100 problem test, and he basically says it's mandatory to write down your solutions so that you can check the solutions against the book solutions and see which key variations you saw and which you missed. I just have a quick example here. One of my old notebooks, as you can see, it's not super neat, but you kind of get the idea, just writing down all the variations you calculated, some kind of evaluation. And overall, I think this is a great way to judge your overall calculation ability. The next habit that I would strongly suggest you incorporate into your training is to, of course, review the solution for any chess problems that you miss. So this goes for if you're solving problems from a book, from an app, if you're doing Puzzle Rush. When I'm taking my training seriously, and I know there are a lot of casual players out there, so it's not like you have to do these things, but again, if you're taking your training as seriously as possible, then after every run in Puzzle Rush, I'll click on the 3 problems I got wrong. I'll first try them a second time, try to see if I can just get it without the pressure of the clock. and then if I really can't figure it out, then I'll check the solution and I'll try to learn from that idea. Because if you didn't find the solution, it means that the pattern wasn't recognizable enough, or you missed some key detail. Whatever it is, it's going to be useful and instructive to you in the long run. If you want to be super dedicated, take all of the problems that you miss and again put them in a database and then review them later, because clearly these are the patterns that you are not quite recognizing as quickly as you could. Number 4, I know a lot of players love playing blitz and bullet. I'm no exception to that. But after a bullet session or blitz session, if you really want to actually get some improvement out of that and, let's say, keep it from being just a total waste of time, review the opening, especially if you got blown out of the water in the opening, if you're playing black and your opponent just checkmated you in 15 moves, or if you're playing white and you got absolutely no advantage, or you were even worse out of the opening with white, well then you're going to be repeating those mistakes over and over again if you don't review the opening and figure out what you should have done instead. Different sites have different ways of doing this. I know on Lichess they have an opening explorer. I believe chess.com has some opening databases as well, chess24. If you already have Chessbase and databases, you can obviously go in and check those there. But the point is to just try to improve your openings one game at a time. There are certainly some dedicated players out there who will, after every blitz game, just review the opening real quick, just to see where they could find an improvement. And you might not remember everything forever, but it will greatly reduce the amount of times that you, let's say, repeat the same mistake in the opening over and over again. And finally, the last habit that I would suggest for you guys is probably the hardest one to incorporate, because you simply just have to keep reminding yourself to do it, is to always use your brain and your thinking as much as possible, even when you're running the engine, and especially when you're running the engine. Too many players turn on the engine, whether it's on your local computer or again on an online site like Lichess or chess.com, and they simply rely on the engine to tell them what's going on. I think this is a very dangerous approach because, number one, engines aren't perfect, especially if they have a low depth like 20, 25. They're really going to miss a lot of details. But number two, you're not going to understand a whole lot about the position just by knowing the engine evaluation. I mean, if you see some position and the engine says it's +1, okay, now you know that position is advantageous for white, but you're not really understanding why it's better or why the move you played lost your advantage, and so on and so forth. So the way to get around this is to look at every position yourself with your own eyes. And what I mean by this is, when you see a position, you're naturally going to have some kind of instinct. You might consider some moves, you might think some pieces are strong, you might find some ideas, and many times they're not going to be matching up with what the engine is telling you. And this is, I think, one of the most important moments to kind of dig in and really challenge the engine. If you see some attacking move that looks promising to you and the engine isn't suggesting it, well, put it on the board, force the engine to analyze it and see what it thinks. And one of two things might happen. Number one, the engine might change its mind. Engines are often underestimating sacrifices and attacking possibilities until you actually force them to calculate. And number two, maybe the more likely case is the engine is going to show you why your idea is wrong, why it's tactically flawed. Okay, you have this nice attacking move, but it turns out your opponent has some resource and just refutes the attack immediately. And that's instructive. You can learn from that because you might pick up that idea and you might be able to use that in future games. So as much as you can when you're analyzing with the engine, ask questions, try to understand what's going on. If the engine is suggesting some move and you're looking at the board and you're seeing some tactic, D3, why isn't this move just winning a piece, forking two pieces? Well, put it on the engine and ask the question. Then the engine will say, oh, knight takes f2, you're dead lost, blah, 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 etc., etc. And then you'll understand, oh, well, this was the key resource that I wasn't missing. So the more you can train yourself to do this, I think the better your understanding overall of the game will become. This is especially useful in opening work. This is more of a tip for advanced players, but I've certainly had situations where I had really good opening preparation and I followed the engine lines move by move. And then when I got to the board and I had the position that I was hoping to get, I certainly started looking at it and realized that I don't understand anything that's going on in this position. And this is often what happens when you're relying way too much on the engine evaluations. Now, I understand most players watching this, aren't going to be strong enough to really be able to evaluate positions themselves and challenge the engine, but try to do it, try to ask questions, just try to see, okay, my first instinct in this position is to play this, and just see what the engine does against that and see whether it's working or not. And regardless of what the outcome is, I'm sure you can learn from that analysis. All right, guys, hopefully this was a helpful video for you. If you have any other habits you'd like to suggest to other viewers or to myself, please feel free to comment below, and make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It really means a lot. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.